Oklahoma Republicans have already pre-filed a bill that would force every public school classroom in the state to display a copy of the Ten Commandments. Oklahoma, by the way, is currently ranked 49 when it comes to the states and education, but they figured out how to fix that. It's by posting the Ten Commandments everywhere. And what they are doing is they just pre-filed this bill. It's all, look at the date. It's February 3rd, 2025. Like, they are getting ready to push this through in a couple of months when they're back in session. But what this bill would do, I'll show you what the text of the bill says. Look at letter A here, line 17. Beginning with the 2025-2026 school year, every public school shall display in a conspicuous place in each classroom of the school a durable poster or framed copy of the Ten Commandments that meets the requirements of Section B. And then later in this short bill, they say, all right, the text of the poster shall read as follows. And you could see it's like the King James Version 10 Commandments. If you actually go through and count them, there are actually more than 10. But again, these people are not interested in math, just like they're not interested in science or history. But that is a bill they are trying to get through in Oklahoma. And I actually made a video about this exact thing like a year ago, because they tried this same thing last year. The guy sponsoring this bill is Jim Olsen. He is a Republican state representative. He tried this last year. It did not go anywhere. But this year, he carbon copied the same text. He just changed the dates on it, and he's going to give it another shot. But there is reason to be a little worried about it. And that's what I wanted to talk about specifically. Just to tell you, the bill says if a classroom does not have a poster, or it has one that doesn't meet all the requirements, they have to accept a privately donated poster that does meet the requirements. Interestingly enough, one of the things that came up last year is that if you read the text of the bill carefully, nowhere in it does it say the Ten Commandments have to be written in English. And when I pointed that out last year, a Florida-based activist named Chaz Stevens said, interesting, because I have some mock-ups of posters I would like to send Oklahoma. This is one of them. This is the Ten Commandments written in Arabic. And he also said, here's another one he could send if they needed it in English. It has all the text of the Ten Commandments. He's just really excited to share a few words specifically. But just saying, like, they did not fix that this time around. I would have expected he would have added in, Olsen would have added in a word in the bill or a sentence in the bill, like, oh, by the way, the posters have to be in English or whatever. The font must be as follows. He didn't do any of that. He's so lazy, he just copy pasted the bill that didn't work next time around. Now, needless to say, all of this is a blatant attempt to inject Christianity into public schools. To quote a federal judge who once declared a Ten Commandments monument outside a Pennsylvania public school illegal, he said, there is no context plausibly suggesting that this plainly religious message has any broader secular meaning. Like, of course, this is to promote religion. What other reason would you have to put this in the classrooms? From the very first commandment, I am the Lord thy God, this endorses a very specific brand of Christianity, and the government has no business telling kids what religious rules they need to follow. I don't need to tell you all the reasons the Ten Commandments are wrong, but there's no educational benefit to forcing them to bow down before like the one true Christian God, or saying they cannot make false idols, or they can't take God's name in vain, or they have to rest on Sunday. And it's kind of weird that these people, Republicans, the family values people, want to tell kindergartners, hey, kids, don't have sex with your neighbor's wife or your maidservant or whatever's in the actual text here. I'm not sure children need to be told about adultery when they're 5. If I told you that was in a young adult novel, Republicans would want it banned. And also, by the way, no teacher in the state is clamoring for this. Which school districts are like, hey, lawmakers, you know what would help us out a ton? No. We don't need raises for our employees. We don't need better textbooks. No, what we need is garbage in the classroom. Like, who is asking for this? It's not just a bad idea, though. It's obviously illegal because they tried this in other states. I'll get to that in a second. Let me tell you really quickly, who the hell is this guy, Jim Olsen, who is sponsoring this bill? This guy is someone who has, I want to make sure I'm saying this right. He has sponsored bills to punish doctors who provide healthcare to women. He wants to reduce the penalty for people who unlawfully carry weapons. He wants to ban the teaching of the 1619 Project, which kind of centers America's history around slavery. He said he cited the Bible when he was saying we should hit kids in schools. That's who this dude is. And I'm sure, as many of you know, this is Oklahoma, where there's a guy who's running the State Board of Education, or the Superintendent of Public Instruction, named Ryan Walters, who has spent much of the past year doing everything he can to push Christianity in the classrooms. He has bought 500 Trump Bibles for AP government classes. I've made a video about that. Just last week, he issued new standards for social studies classes. I'll talk about that separately from this. But in 2023, last year, Walters formed a faith committee full of conservative Christian pastors. And that committee said, you know what we should do? We should put the 10 Commandments in public schools. And this dude is now acting on it, right? So part of me thinks, it's not going to pass. Olsen just wants to tell his voters, you guys, I tried to get the 10 Commandments in schools, but those rhinos stopped me from passing the bill. But he could also argue now that his bill has a better chance of getting passed because there's actually more support in the Republican Party in Oklahoma for Christian nationalism. And this gets a little inside ballgame for you, but one of the reasons last year's bill went nowhere is because it got sent to the Appropriations and Budget Education Subcommittee. Like, that subcommittee was going to look at the bill. They would vote on whether it makes it, to the rest of their voting members. And the chair of that committee was a Republican named Mark McBride. And Mark McBride gets to decide which bills we are all going to discuss and debate and vote on. And guess what? Mark McBride said, we are not even considering this stupid bill about the 10 Commandments. It has no chance of working. We have other issues we want to deal with. Unfortunately, and I say this, I know how it sounds. Unfortunately, this conservative Republican, Mark McBride, is no longer in office. He was term limited out. And the new chair of that same committee is a guy named Chad Caldwell, who actually has supported Ryan Walters. Like, the Republican lawmakers in Oklahoma, some of them, they tried to impeach Ryan Walters this past year. And Chad Caldwell was one of the dudes who did not go along with that, which means you have this Christian nationalist in charge of the committee. He could very well put this bill up for a vote, and then it could go to the Republicans in Oklahoma. So there is reason to think this bill kind of has a chance this year of passing. I'm not saying it's legal. I'm saying it could pass, and that would be disturbing too. When the Oklahoman newspaper spoke to Olsen about this bill, and they're like, why are you trying to do this? Maybe this won't work. He actually said, I think it's very important, and I want to make sure we are talking about this. Let me see if I could pull up here what he said. For some reason, it's super slow. Maybe I have too many of those coin tabs still up. Here's what he said. He said that the U.S.'s legal structure and cultural background had strong biblical foundation. Here we go. And he also gave an example of laws about stealing. Let me scroll down here. Look at what this guy says. Come back here. Well, I can't do that because thou shalt not steal, which comes from the Bible and which made it into our statutes, he said. That's good for everybody, whatever their personal religious belief might be. So this guy's argument for the 10 Commandments is because the Ten Commandments says thou shalt not steal, everyone knows you're not supposed to steal. Which I just have to say, if you're a Christian and the only reason you're not stealing from other people or you are not murdering other people is because the Bible tells you that's a bad thing to do, you're scary. You need to find yourself a better set of morals. Because why do you need someone to tell you that's wrong? Could you not figure that one out for yourself? Yikes, what the hell? But that's what the sponsor of this bill is saying. In his mind, no one ever considered not stealing until Jesus came along. And then they're all like, oh, we shouldn't do that? Huh, let's give that a try. So now here's the question. What happens if this 10 Commandments bill does pass? What's going to happen? It doesn't mean it's going to go anywhere because we saw that in Louisiana this year. Louisiana Republicans did pass a bill like this to put the 10 Commandments in every classroom. Their bill was actually a lot more nuanced than the one that is being proposed in Oklahoma, and a federal judge has already struck it down. Now, that is going to be appealed. It's still in courts. But right now, that Louisiana bill is not looking too good. I'm not sure why they think it's going to fare any better in Oklahoma. Furthermore, in Oklahoma, they tried putting up a 10 Commandments monument on the Capitol grounds. And in 2015, that was declared unconstitutional. And in 2016, voters rejected an attempt to change the state constitution to allow state money to go to religious purposes. Like they said no to that. In Oklahoma, they did that. So I don't know. You would think a standalone 10 Commandments in school, in classrooms bill is not going to go anywhere either. But you've all seen what the Republican Party is like these days. So the question to me is not, does Olsen have the votes to pass this? Because he does. It's whether Republicans in the state want to further alienate public school teachers who have already shown a remarkable ability to organize and protest Republican overreach into public schools. The GOP in the state has taken some measures to like placate educators, but telling them to push Christianity in their classrooms would only undo anything right that they've done over the past couple of years, including like small raises. So Olsen has sponsored this bill. It will probably have a companion in the state Senate soon. It doesn't yet. And if it passes, it would go into effect next summer, which means it would be legal by the next school year, unless a federal judge strikes it down. So we will see what ends up happening to this bill, but it's just another example of Republican Christian zealots trying to shove their religion into public schools. All right, I'm going to stop there for now and take some questions. What else we got here? The Nadia, thanks for that donation. The SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, documents fundies have basically split the transgender from the LGB strategy being decided. They say that happened during the 2017 Values Voter Summit. And I assume you're right about that. But yeah, they seem to have surrendered on gay rights and lesbian rights and bi rights. They're not really fighting that the same way they were 10, 20 years ago. They've decided that going against trans people is the winning bigot battle that they want to fight. Like the Republicans in office know that. That's why they're doing it too. And so this is not just something organically happening. Like you were saying, Nadia, this is part of a deliberate strategy. They're trying to figure out what issue can we divide people on, because we know our bigot voters really get inspired by the thought of beating the people they hate at the ballot box. And so if we can say, like, vote for us, that way trans people suffer, that is going to work because their base is full of horrible, horrible people. And you know what their base is not motivated by? Here's how we're going to help people through legislation. They are not motivated by that at all. And guess what? It worked again this past election cycle. What else we got here? It was a show for, this is talking about that drag show in a different a city from the last segment. It was a show for a contest for the best drag queen in the area. Children were encouraged to go in the scenario and dance Christmas songs with the people in the contest. That sounds adorable and fun to watch. I don't know who the winner was, but cool. What else we got? Donna says, love that poster, pretty colors. That is talking about Chaz Stevens' poster. He's actually made those for Louisiana as well. So as soon as one of these 10 Commandments laws goes into effect, he has every intention of sending these posters to Louisiana schools or Florida schools, anything like that. Hopefully that didn't freeze. Okay, what else we got here? Why is the King James version of the Bible so popular with the right? Why that one? Um, it's from the 1600s. I think they just believe it's the official one. It hasn't been tainted by people with liberal agendas who are trying to sanitize what the Bible says by trying to modernize the language. And so they like the old school version. That's kind of the basis of it, but you would have to ask someone who's a scholar in that field. All right. Do we have any other questions here? Otherwise, I will move on to the next story. Hopefully we are done. All right, I'm going to get this next one. Oh, weird that I went to a religious school in the 2000s and they never thought to post them. I do recall the golden rule and the beatitudes on the walls, never the 10 commandments. Isn't that interesting? And by the way, there was a horrific story a week or two ago about that Christian school where a shooter came in and killed people in the school. And I don't say this to make light of an obvious tragedy, but you would think there's a school that has plenty of Bibles in it. There's a school that presumably had the 10 Commandments somewhere. And if this person was a student at the school at some point, clearly that didn't stop this person. Why do you think, Jim Olsen and other Republicans, why do you think putting the 10 Commandments up anywhere else is going to change the issue? You know what I mean? It has never worked before. I have said this before. The only way the Bible is going to prevent school shootings is if you hold it up as a shield. That's it. It's not going to do anything else. Thank you for this. The King James Version was the first one mass printed after the invention of the Gutenberg printing press. And Den says he has bad internet tonight, so there might be a little delay in the comments. Okay, I am going to move on, I think, to the next story here. Hopefully we are good there, Den. And what if someone sends the version that states you have to break the neck of your firstborn unless you have to pay for them first to the temple, which is a rule in the Bible. And Christians are not eager to put that one up on the school walls, though I suspect there are atheists who might make posters saying that, along with a lot of other Bible verses, if any of these laws ever went into effect. Did you see the Heritage Foundation's article that concluded low birth rates would increase if the government did provide loans for higher education and if there were more religious K to 12 schools? So we could fix birth rates and make them go up if we had loans for higher education and there were more religious schools. These people are so obsessed with birth rates. You know what would help increase the birth rates? Make sure people are allowed to get pregnant when they choose to be pregnant instead of forcing it against their will and ruining their ability to plan their future. Uh, Paying off their student loans, giving them forgiveness for student loans that are out of control, making higher education free. State schools, make them free through the government. You don't need more religious K to 12 schools for that. You just need to give people the opportunity to actually live their lives instead of worrying about financial difficulties. And then guess what? The birth rate might actually go up. But these people are like, well, we can't make all that happen. That would fix their lives too much. Let's just force them to have babies against their will. Like, that never works as a policy. There's a lot of legal stealing that goes on in American capitalism. What is Oklahoma going to do about that? No kidding. You think Elon Musk made that much money? No, no, no. Like, you can't. There are no ethical billionaires out there. Maybe Mackenzie Scott, and that's about it. All right. What they don't realize about the KJV is that it's a very pro monarchy one, which they don't care about, or they're like, yeah, we could go with that. We need a king. That's why they like Trump.